Timarandasya Ganagana Salakya Chaksurun Meritam Yanatajmai Sri Gurave Namaha Sri Chaitanya Manobhistam Stapitam Yanabhutare Swayam Rupa Karamayam Dharati Swaparantikam. Today we'd like to talk about being calm in crisis. Why is it in life that we can be happy, full of calm, contentment, everything's good, looking good, feeling good, life is good, great job, great children, great home, and then out of nowhere, we're hit by turbulence. A routine visit to the doctor's office turns up a problem. A relationship that's been going on for years turns rocky and contentious. You get a registered letter delivered to your door one morning with a lawsuit that's just been filed. Your mother-in-law moves in permanently. The challenge is to look within and look ahead. Within to the eternal spirit soul, not to ebaham jatuna sham natum neme, nitchaiva navivisami, sarvavaya matapara. God created you as an eternal living being. You existed before the creation of the universe. You'll continue to exist after the dissolution of the universe. And whatever challenges are facing you should not be enough to spoil your day. What to speak of your week, your month, or your life. And the second thing is when you look ahead, what that means to say is that you realize that your troubles are temporary. This too shall pass. Once in India reigned a king who upon his signet ring engraved a maxim true and wise, which if held before the eyes, gave him counsel at a glance, fit for any change and chance. Solemn words, and these were they, even this will pass away. Trains of camels through the sands brought him gems from Samarkand. Fleets of galleys through the seas brought him pearls to match with these. But he counted not his gain, treasures of the mine or main. What is wealth, the king would say, even this will pass away. The revels of the court at the zenith of the sport, when the palms of all his guests burned with clapping of his jests, said the king amid his figs and wine, O loving friend of mine, pleasure comes but not to stay, even this will pass away. Fighting on a furious field, once a javelin pierced his shield. Soldiers with a loud lament bore him bleeding to his tent. Groaning from his tortured side, pain is hard to bear, he cried, but with patience day by day, even this will pass away. Towering in the public square, 20 cubits in the air, stood his statue carved in stone. Then the king, disguised, unknown, stood before his sculptured name, musing meekly, what is fame? Fame is but a slow decay. Even this will pass away. Struck with palsy, wise and old, waiting at the gates of gold, said the king with his dying breath, life is done, but what is death? Then in answer to the king, fell a sunbeam on his ring, showing by a heavenly ray, you guessed it, this too shall pass away. Life sometimes may seem to have taken a plunge. You feel like you've been put into a giant mixer. Others around you have panicked. But devotees know, those who are grounded in the teachings of Krishna and the Bhagavad Gita, that sooner or later, calm will be restored. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. The story of Ram addresses this point. On the very day of his coronation, he was sent away to the forest. Instead of silken sheets, wearing a crown of royal finery, he had to take the hard ground for his bed. He had to wear the bark of trees and keep matted locks of hair. Instead of having royal bodyguards to protect him, he was on his own in a forest infested with cannibalistic monsters, creatures of the night. How did Ram respond? He looked within. Nasochati, nakanchati, sama sarvashu buddhishu nasyatru nabanasyati. He neither hankered after a better situation, nor did he lament at the loss of his kingdom. He remained cool, calm, serene, and equipoised. Similarly, inward-looking devotees neither hanker for gain nor lament the so-called loss. Matrash Parshash Tukante Sitosni Shuka Agama Painon Tamsti Nasa Bharata. In India, it's everybody's custom. There's very little running water, the plumbing is faulty, and especially there's no hot water. So you might as well just get up in the pre-dawn hours before the sun has risen and take your bath in the river. There's no heated rivers in India. It's very chilly, your teeth will chatter. But because it's cold, that doesn't mean that you're going to go through the day filthy dirty. You're going to put up with it. There's nothing you can do to change the fact that rivers, with all of our technological advances, AC and central heating, there's still no central heating for rivers. So there's nothing you can do about it. Just put up with it. Just tolerate. You have to do it in order to get clean, and cleanliness is next to godliness. Still in India, without AC in the villages, the women cook over an open fire. The temperature outside is 115 degrees, and they're wearing a hot sari. So it's not that they can start peeling off layers of clothes and getting something a little more skimpy. That's not acceptable. They have to just go ahead and tolerate it. That's what Ram did. Some things you can't change, some things you don't want to change. They're for your own betterment, to mature you, to grow you, to take your character up to the next level. Everything is temporary. It did not come to stay, rather it came to pass. You may be at present in a miserable condition, but the law of karma dictates that sooner or later, if you just tolerate your present miserable condition, things will change and you will find yourself in a happier condition. The opposite is also true. You're now in a happy condition. Just wait. Sooner or later, you'll be in a miserable condition. Now, knowing this, you can seek the middle ground in your consciousness. What is that? Cool, calm, equanimity. You can be the one when everybody else is losing it, everybody else is complaining, moaning and groaning. You, with this knowledge under your belt, can be the one with a smile on your face while everybody else is losing it. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. I remember seeing a newspaper article way back in the 70s. It came from one of those London sensationalistic papers. George Harrison of the Beatles had been on a plane somewhere. He was obviously famous, obviously wealthy. He was obviously traveling first class. He was in a special cabin. He had special hostesses, special food and drinks, special service. But none of that is ever any guarantee against the unexpected. All of a sudden, as the newspaper article described, the plane hit a pocket of turbulence, dropped 150 feet in a second, began to shake, rattle, and roll from the pressure. Passengers were jerked back and forth as if they'd been on a roller coaster. It seemed to go on and on and on and last what seemed to be an eternity. Everyone was sure the plane would break apart. All the passengers erupted into sheer, unadulterated terror. Ah! There were screams of hysteria from everyone except George Harrison, the son of Hari, who remained calmly in his seat chanting on his japa beats. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. What do we learn? In the tough times, you have to go to your faith. In the tough times, you have to trust that Krishna is piloting the plane. I heard someone once say that if God is your co-pilot, you need to move over. Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita tells Arjuna, don't be surprised by unexpected turbulence. Arjuna was surprised that his own teachers, his own relatives, cousin, brothers, and friends wanted to kill him. He said, Klebyam mashma. Krishna then responded to Arjuna's surprise. Krishna said, don't be surprised in this material world when, even from your family members, there comes criticism, betrayal, envy. Klebyam mashma gamaparta netid twai sudramridyam chakvatishta padantapa. Give up this petty naivete that you can create comfort, permanency in this material world. Don't panic out of shock and surprise when things turn upside down. Krishna says to Arjuna, I never promised you there wouldn't be difficulties, there wouldn't be turbulence, but my promise to you and to all those who are devoted to me is that I'll always get you through the difficulties. So can we encourage you today, like Krishna encouraged Arjuna, to trust in the words of the Lord? 18th chapter Bhagavad Gita, 58th verse. Makchita sarva durgani twat prashadam karishati atached tvam ahankaram nasurtafsi vinakshati. If you, Arjuna, and you, people in general, become conscious of Krishna as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna assures you that you will pass over all the obstacles of conditioned life. However, the downside is that if you do not work in divine God consciousness, but act through false ego, not hearing Krishna's lessons of the Bhagavad Gita, you will then be lost. I've heard it said, trouble is inevitable, but whether you allow yourself to get miserable because of the trouble, that's optional. That's your choice. Trouble descends on all of us from time to time, but it's up to us whether we're going to fall apart. Now, would you agree with me that it's one thing to know and to envision and predict and be prepared for a challenge that's coming up, like midterm exams or a job interview? But what about things that totally come out of left field? You did not see them coming. They completely blindsided you, like tsunamis, earthquakes, unexpected illness, pandemic, divorces, deaths, all these tragedies that just catch us completely off guard. You didn't see them coming. They show up out of nowhere, and in a blink, your whole life is topsy-turvy. I don't know if you remember, but he was very big when I was a kid. Christopher Reeves, handsome, strong, played Superman, rescued all kinds of people from the villains and dire circumstances. One day he was out just riding a horse, just a gentle old horse, and who would have thought? Something happened, something startled the horse. He took a start. Christopher Reeves tumbled off the back of the horse, landed wrong, broke his neck. Forever after, he was paralyzed from the neck on down. But he was able to deal with it with a good spirit, with a good attitude. He was able to process it. He said at one point, the body is not who I am. The spirit transcends the body. We've seen rain fall not only on the unjust, but it also falls impartially and equally on the just. And when that happens, it's easy to give up your happiness. It's easy to panic. It's easy to question God. It's easy to fall apart and lose your faith. But we have to realize that crisis is not a surprise to Krishna. It may be unexpected to us, but Krishna knows the end from the beginning. Nothing happens outside of his knowledge. Krishna would not have allowed that victory unless he had a purpose for it in your life. Now, it may seem from time to time that everything is spinning wildly out of control, but can I tell you that no matter how uncontrolled it seems, you are in a controlled environment. Krishna or God has you in the palm of his hand. Nothing can happen without Krishna's permission. Our attitude should be, this surprise may look like a setback, but I know it's a setup for God to show his power in a greater way. As many of you know from reading the Mahabharata, the epic of Greater India, because of Jayadratha, who wasn't even a significant warrior. He wasn't on the level of Bhishma or Dronacharya or Ashwatthama. He was just kind of a mid-range warrior who had a grudge against the Pandavas and had gotten a boon from Lord Shiva that he would be able to stop 4 of the Pandavas on one day of the hostility, something he would not ordinarily have been able to do, save and except for the boon of Lord Shiva. So because of Jayadratha keeping his uncles from protecting the 16-year-old Abhimanyu, even at a time when Krishna was on a different part of the battlefield, driving Arjuna's chariot, that 16-year-old boy, Abhimanyu, was ganged up upon by 7 mature veteran warriors and killed, slaughtered unfairly. Now, skeptics may have pointed to the death of Abhimanyu and said to Arjuna, Arjuna, what good is your faith? What good is your devotion? What good is your God? He couldn't even protect your son, even though he was right there on the battlefield. Here's the secret. Krishna allowed the tragedy to happen so that he could turn Arjuna's test as a father into a testimony of his faith in the Supreme Father, the personality of Godhead. The next day, according to his vow, and against all odds, Arjuna, with the help of Krishna, killed Jayadratha. Duryodhana's spies had heard about Arjuna's intention to kill Jayadratha on the following day, and anticipating that, he organized his army of 4 million soldiers in a needle formation which extended 49 miles long with Jayadratha at the back. So in order to fulfill his promise, Krishna had to drive Arjuna's chariot either over, around, or through 49 miles of 4 million soldiers divided into charioteers, cavalry, infantry, and elephant soldiers. And against all odds, Arjuna killed Jayadratha just at sunset, in spite of his being protected by all the heroes of the Kauravi army, in spite of his being behind 49 miles worth of 4 million soldiers. Not even all of that could save he who offended Krishna's devotees. Krishna's purpose in bringing crisis is often to show us his awesome power. He wants to show his favor in such a way that the ungodly will run with their tails between their legs, and the devotees will celebrate by rejoicing. Haribo! Haribo! Hare Krishna! If you view adversity as an opportunity, Krishna will use you as an example, just as with Arjuna. Krishna wants your neighbors to say, how in the world did she get well? The medical report said she was finished. How in the world did he get that management position? 6 months ago, he was laid off from his work. Now, we're never promised that challenges won't come, but we are promised that the challenges will never get the best of you if you keep a good attitude and stay in faith. Deceitful people will never get the best of the devotees. The devotees will always get the best of them. Just do your part and keep Krishna first place by chanting his holy names every morning, and he'll bring you out better off than you were before. Why? Because you and Krishna are a majority. Now, sometimes we get all down on ourselves and we tend to believe that the difficulties have come because of negative karma. We think we've done something wrong, either in this life or in a past life, to merit the problems. But can I tell you, it's not always the case. Some difficulties arrive not because we've done something wrong, but because we're doing something right. Some difficulties arrive because you're making a difference in the world. Think about it. Of all the 8,400,000 species of life, the only one in which we can take new ground for the kingdom, show our faith in the greatest way, is in this unique human form of life. In this unique form of life, we can serve Krishna, put him first place, yad kodosi, yad ishnasi, yajdahosi, dadasi yad. In all that we do, in this human form of life, uniquely we can pursue excellence in devotional service. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Rama Rama, Hare. The enemy Maya's job to keep us in this material world is completed if you settle into mediocrity, get complacent where you are, or even judgmental about the people around you. You may be religious, but nobody wants to be like you, turning people off with your sourness. If you're bitter and discouraged, that's not only going to keep you from your destiny, but it will also push people away. But if, on the other hand, in spite of your challenges, you keep being your best, smiling, being good to people, even if they're mistreating you, keep doing the right thing, even when wrong things happen to you again and again, those troubles are a sure sign in your case that amazing things are in your future. Have confidence that your happiness will be fully and abundantly restored. Your test will become a testimony to others. Once I heard about a farmer. He planted a field full of the highest quality seeds. However, his neighbor, who was envious, came at night and planted weeds in that same field. The weeds started to come up along with the wheat. His workers asked him if he wanted to retaliate by them going at night and planting weeds in the neighbor's field. He said no. Well, they said, then do you want us to rip out the weeds in your field? He said no. Let them both grow. If you try to rip out the tiny weeds now, you may trample the wheat. Or due to inexperience, you may mistake the wheat for the weeds and pull that out by mistake. Let them both grow, and in the fullness of time, we'll easily distinguish one from the other. What do we learn from this little parable? Every action will reap its reaction in due course of time. Some deeds that in the beginning we judged were weed-like may surprise us and reap a positive result. We don't know how God is directing others to accomplish his will. And some actions which seemed wheat-like in the beginning may bring a result the opposite of what we intended. For instance, some holier-than-thou people think they are wheat, but if the truth be known, they're weeds. Other, more humble souls think they are weeds who are actually wheat and are more pleasing to Krishna than the self-righteous, judgmental criticism people. Most weed-like people, in fact, don't think they're weeds. They boost their self-esteem by favorably comparing themselves to others. Well, at least I didn't marry who she married. Well, at least I never got addicted to that. Well, at least I never missed church. Well, at least I would never spend my money like she spends hers. Well, at least my kids finished high school. Prabhupada talks about weed-like and wheat-like. Quote, the weed-like propensity is to exploit others, and the wheat-like propensity is to do good to others. That's the difference. Another story is told of two brothers who were well known around town for their crooked business dealings and underworld connections. They were just as mean and cold-blooded as you could imagine. Eventually, one of the brothers died, and the surviving brother wanted to give his brother a funeral fit for a king. He called the funeral home, made all the arrangements, and then he called the town's minister, made him an offer. Said, I'll give you $10,000 to put that new roof on the church if, in eulogizing my brother, you'll call him a saint. The minister agreed. The whole town turned out for the funeral, and the minister began. The man you see in the coffin was a vile and debauched individual. He was a liar, a thief, a deceiver, a manipulator, a reprobate, and a hedonist. He destroyed the fortunes, careers, and lives of countless people in this city, many of whom are here today. The man did every dirty, rotten thing you can think of, but compared to his brother, he was a saint. So can we tell you, don't jump to conclusions early on. Wait until the end of the movie. Rather than rushing to judgment, being eager to pay someone back, better to be patient. Be calm and see what the harvest brings. At that time, the weeds can be identified, pulled up, and the wheat preserved. Krishna was on the planet 125 years. His mission was paritranaya sadhanam, to protect the devotees, vinashya duskritam, and to annihilate the miscreants. But he didn't rush. He was on the planet, as I said, 125 years. He waited until his 90th year to pull up the weeds. He allowed time for the seeds, both good and bad, to mature, for polarization to take place, things which had been planted and deeds which had been performed 10, 20, 30, 40 years before, even from previous lifetimes. He didn't rush to harvest. It is said, the mills of God grind slowly, yet they grind exceeding small, though with patience he stands waiting, with exactness grinds he all. Similarly, as we mentioned earlier, there were so many crimes committed towards Lord Ram, but he didn't retaliate. He remained mild, peaceful, non-reactive. Even the day before his combat with Ravana, he was still doing the right thing, still planting good seeds for the future. Even at the 11th hour, he said that he would forgive Ravana if Ravana would return his wife and make amends. Rama wanted always to do good, even to his enemy. Rama was too busy planting good seeds to worry about the weeds. Similarly, we need to have faith that Krishna's brought us this far. He's not going to fail you now. That sudden, unexpected setback, which seems to have taken the wind out of your sails, which was got you worried, can I tell you it's a setup for a comeback? Sometimes it seems that your enemies have the upper hand. Your enemies seem to have gotten the best of you. But Krishna's promise in the Bhagavad Gita is that it is just a matter of time before you get the best of them. Be patient, have a good attitude. We read how it was that Mother Yashoda tried to bind up Krishna with a rope around his waist. And she got one piece of rope and found it was 2 inches too short. She tied another piece of rope to that first rope and still couldn't join them. They were still 2 inches short. She found a third piece of rope and lengthened the first two, but when she tried to join them together, it was still 2 inches too short. What do we learn from that? When your enemies think they have you just where they want you, outnumbered, out-tricked, outmanned, Krishna will always be 2 inches out in front of them. In the Bhagavad Gita, 10th chapter, 16th verse, Krishna says, Duyutam chaletam ashmi, tejas tejashvinamaham, jayoshmin vivashayoshmin, sattva sattvataham. I am the gambler of cheats. You want to cheat? Nobody's a bigger cheater than Krishna. He's the splendor of the splendor. He's victory, adventure, and the strength of the strong. Prabhupada says in the purport to this verse, there are many kinds of cheaters all over the universe. Of all cheating processes, gambling stands supreme and therefore represents Krishna. As the supreme, Krishna can be more deceitful than any mere man. If Krishna chooses to deceive a person, no one can surpass him in his deceit. His greatness then is not simply one-sided, it is all-sided. If you are alive and if you are breathing, you can still, no matter what you're up against, what's challenging you, you can still accomplish all the things that Krishna created you for. Don't let a temporary crisis derail you, steal your joy. Don't let a temporary crisis stall you from pressing forward to your destiny. Why? Because all things work together for your good. All things separately may not make sense. That's why we're telling you tonight that when it comes together one day, it will make perfect sense. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Again, Bhagavad Gita, chapter 6, 40th verse, Shri Bhagavan Uvacha, Partha nevaha namutra vinasas nasya vidyate nahi kalyana krit kashchid durgatim tata gachatim. The blessed Lord said, O son of Pritha, a transcendentalist engaged in auspicious activities does not meet with destruction either in this world or the spiritual world. One who does good, my friend, is never overcome by evil. Nothing in life is wasted by Krishna. Bad things may indeed happen to good people, but it's also true that Krishna-conscious people overcome the bad things and come out better off than they were before. Krishna will turn your test into a testimony. He's still on the throne. He still has you in the palm of his hand. Get ready. Your unexpected difficulties are a sure sign that Krishna has something amazing planned for your future in this life, and in the next life, you're going to go back to home, back to Godhead. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. We can continue to chant until the Kirtan is all set up and ready to roll here. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama.
It will start on a slow note and then slowly